Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that this tiny piece of copper could be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it looks different at first glance, but because of a small detail most people never notice. Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1960 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that quietly holds secrets, surprises, and in some cases, serious value. The 1960 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in 1960 at the Denver Mint, which is why you'll see a small D Mint mark on it. At first, it looks just like any other penny from that era. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the classic wheat ears design on the back, a design that had been used since 1909. Millions of these coins were made, and many are still in circulation today. So you might be wondering, how could something so common be valuable? To understand that, we need to go back in time. The year 1960 was a period of change in the United States. The economy was growing, new technologies were emerging, and everyday items, including coins, were being produced in massive quantities to meet demand. The Denver Mint struck over 1.5 billion pennies that year. That's right, more than a billion. On paper, that should make the 1960 D penny one of the least rare coins out there. But here's where things get interesting. During 1960, the U.S. Mint made a subtle but important change to the design of the Lincoln penny. This change involved the lettering on the front of the coin, specifically the word Liberty and the date. The result was two distinct varieties, the small date and the large date. And this is where collectors start paying very close attention. The large date version has numbers that appear taller and more spread out. The small date version, on the other hand, has thinner, more delicate numbers that sit slightly lower. At a glance, the difference might seem minor, but to collectors, it makes all the difference in the world. The 1960 D small date penny is much scarcer than the large date version, especially in higher grades. Now let's talk about the materials and design. The 1960 D penny is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives it that rich, reddish-brown color when it's in good condition. Over time, exposure to air and handling can darken the coin, turning it brown or even nearly black. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right, along with the words, "In God We Trust," above his head and "Liberty" to the left. The date and mint mark sit on the right side. Flip the coin over, and you'll see two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This classic wheat design is one of the most beloved in U.S. coin history, and was used until 1958 for general circulation. However, the 1960 penny actually features the Lincoln Memorial reverse, not wheat ears. This often confuses new collectors, because the wheat design ended in 1958. So the 1960 D penny shows the Lincoln Memorial building on the reverse with E pluribus unum above it. That small detail alone tells you how important it is to really look at your coins carefully. But beyond design differences, what truly drives value are errors and condition. Mint errors are like accidents during production, and they can turn an ordinary coin into something extraordinary. With the 1960 D penny, one of the most talked about errors is the repunched mint mark. This happens when the D mint mark was stamped more than once, slightly off from the original position. Under magnification, you might see a shadow or doubling effect on the mint mark. Another valuable feature is doubling in the lettering or date. This is known as a double die error. It occurs when the coin die itself has a misalignment, causing the design to appear duplicated. These errors are rare and can significantly increase the coin's value. Now let's talk real numbers, because this is where things get exciting. A typical 1960 D large date penny in circulated condition might only be worth a few cents, maybe up to $1 if it's in decent shape. But a 1960 D small date penny, especially in uncirculated condition, can sell for much more. In some cases, high-grade examples have sold for hundreds of dollars. Even more impressive are coins with errors. A 1960 D penny with a clear repunched mint mark or strong doubling can fetch hundreds, sometimes even over $1,000, depending on the condition and rarity of the error. Coins graded in near-perfect condition by professional grading services often bring the highest prices at auctions, so how can you tell if you have one of these valuable coins? Start by looking closely at the date. Compare it to images of small date and large date varieties. Pay attention to the shape and size of the numbers, especially the 6 and the 0. On the small date version, the numbers appear more compact and slightly lower. Next, check the mint mark. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Look for any signs of doubling or unusual shapes. Also, examine the overall condition of the coin. Coins with minimal wear, strong details, and original luster are always more valuable. Avoid cleaning your coin, even if it looks dirty. Cleaning can actually reduce its value significantly. When it comes to authenticity, most 1960D pennies are genuine because they are so common. However, altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify coins to make them appear like rare varieties. That's why it's important to rely on trusted references or consider having your coin evaluated by a professional if you believe it might be valuable. Here's something surprising. Even though billions of these coins were made, finding a high-grade example today is not as easy as you might think. Many were heavily used in circulation, scratched, worn down, or damaged over time. Coins that were kept in rolls or preserved carefully are the ones that tend to survive in top condition. Another fun fact is that 1960 was one of the first years when collectors really started paying attention to small design variations in modern coins. This helped spark a new wave of interest in coin collecting, especially among everyday people who realized that valuable coins might be hiding in their change. Collectors today love the 1960D penny because it represents a perfect mix of history, variety, and accessibility. It's not an ancient coin, and it's not impossible to find. But within this seemingly ordinary coin lies the thrill of discovery. The possibility that you might stumble upon a rare small-date version or a unique error keeps collectors searching. There's also something special about holding a coin that has passed through countless hands over decades. This penny might have been used to buy a newspaper, a cup of coffee, or a piece of candy in 1960. Carries a piece of everyday history, frozen in time. And that's really what makes coin collecting so fascinating. It's not just about money. It's about stories, details, and the excitement of finding something unexpected. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the date, the mint mark, the details, because hidden among ordinary coins could be something far more valuable than you ever imagined. And who knows, that small copper coin sitting quietly in your collection right now might just be a 1960D penny with a story worth far more than 1 cent. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out an ordinary penny, and realizing it might be hiding a story from one of the most important years in modern American history. Not just any story, but one that collectors quietly chase. One that could turn a simple coin into something far more meaningful and sometimes surprisingly valuable. Today, we're talking about the 1964 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of people have held, spent, and forgotten. Yet it still holds secrets that continue to fascinate collectors across the country. At first glance, the 1964 D Lincoln penny looks like any other old copper coin. You'll see Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait on the front, calm and steady, just as it has appeared on pennies for generations. On the back, you'll find the classic wheat ears design, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. But this coin is part of something bigger, something tied to a turning point in U.S. coin history. To understand why this penny matters, we have to go back to the year 1964. America was going through change, economically, socially, and even in the way money was made. During this time, the U.S. Mint was facing a serious coin shortage. People were hoarding coins, especially silver ones, because their metal value was rising. This caused a ripple effect across everyday transactions. In response, the Mint began producing coins at an intense pace. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D Mint mark on the penny, played a major role in this effort. Millions upon millions of 1964 D pennies were struck to keep up with demand. In fact, over 3.7 billion of them were produced, making it one of the highest mintage pennies in U.S. history. Now you might be wondering, if so many were made, how could this coin possibly be valuable? That's where things get interesting. Even though the 1964 D penny is common overall, not all of them are the same. Some were struck with subtle differences, minting errors, or in exceptional condition. And in the world of coin collecting, those small differences can mean everything. Let's talk about what makes this coin unique. First, the metal composition. The 1964 penny is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This is important because shortly after 1964, the composition of coins began to change. Rising copper prices forced the mint to adjust how coins were made in later years. That makes 1964 one of the last years of the traditional copper penny era. When you hold one, you're not just holding a coin, you're holding a piece of history made from real heavy copper, something that feels noticeably different compared to modern pennies. Next, the design. The front, also known as the obverse, features Lincoln's profile, designed by Victor David Brenner. If you look closely, you might even spot his initials, VDB, tucked near Lincoln's shoulder. The reverse design with the wheat ears had actually ended in 1958, so if you're seeing wheat ears on a 1964 penny, you're looking at something unusual and likely altered or misidentified. The correct reverse for 1964 is the Lincoln Memorial, not wheat ears. That alone is a detail that many beginners get wrong, and it can lead to confusion or even scams. Now let's get into the part collectors love most, errors. Some 1964 D pennies were struck with double dies, where parts of the design appear slightly duplicated, especially in the lettering. Others may show off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or die cracks. These errors happen during the minting process, and instead of being destroyed, some slipped into circulation. A double die penny, even a minor one, can sell for significantly more than its face value. In some cases, depending on condition and visibility of the error, these coins have sold for hundreds of dollars. Condition is another huge factor. Most 1964 D pennies you'll find today are worn from circulation. But if you come across one in uncirculated condition, meaning it has no visible wear and still shines with its original luster, the value can increase dramatically. Coins graded at the highest levels, like MS65 or above, are especially desirable. In fact, some high-grade examples of the 1964 D penny have sold for over $100, and in rare cases with exceptional quality or unique features, even more. Now let's talk about real-world value. A typical circulated 1964 D penny is worth around 2 to 5 cents, mainly because of its copper content. But a bright, uncirculated one might fetch $10 to $20. Add a visible minting error, and the value can jump to $50, $100, or higher depending on the rarity and demand. Collectors are always searching for that one coin that stands out from the rest. So how do you know if the one in your hand is real or worth something? Start with the basics. Look for the date, 1964, clearly stamped on the front. Just below the date, you should see a small D, indicating it was minted in Denver. If the mint mark looks unusual, too large, too small, or oddly placed, that could be a sign of tampering. Next, check the color. A genuine 1964 penny should have that rich copper tone, though it may darken over time. Be cautious of coins that look overly shiny or have an unnatural color, as they may have been cleaned or altered. You can also weigh the coin. A standard 1964 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, that could indicate a fake or an error coin, both worth investigating further. And always remember, never clean your coins. Cleaning can damage the surface and reduce the value instantly. Even if the coin is rare, here's a fun fact that surprises many people. Even though the 1964 penny isn't rare in terms of mintage, it's one of the most widely saved coins in American history. During the 1960s, people began realizing that coins might one day be valuable, so they started setting aside rolls of pennies, especially from years like 1964. That means there are still unopened rolls out there today, sitting in drawers, safes, and collections waiting to be rediscovered. Another interesting detail is that 1964 was the last year before major changes hit U.S. coinage. In 1965, the mint removed silver from many coins and temporarily stopped using mint marks altogether to discourage hoarding. So the 1964 D penny represents the end of an era in more ways than one. Collectors love this coin not because it's extremely rare, but because it's accessible. It's a coin that almost anyone can find, yet it still offers the thrill of discovery. It's a reminder that even common objects can hold hidden value if you know what to look for. For beginners, it's often one of the first coins they search for. For experienced collectors, it's a coin they continue to study, looking for that perfect specimen or that one unusual error that others might have missed. And that's really the magic of coin collecting. It's not just about finding something expensive. It's about the hunt, the history, and the connection to the past. So the next time you come across a 1964 D Lincoln penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the details. Feel the weight. Because in a world where everything moves fast, sometimes the smallest, simplest things can carry the most interesting stories. And who knows, the penny you almost overlooked today might just be the one that surprises you tomorrow. Welcome back. What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now, the one you barely notice, could be hiding a story worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but carries a fascinating history, surprising details, and in some cases, real value that collectors are still chasing. The 1967 Lincoln penny is part of one of the most unusual periods in modern American coin history. At its core, it's a small copper coin featuring the familiar profile of President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But what makes this coin stand out isn't just how it looks. It's the story behind why it exists the way it does. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the mid-1960s. The United States was facing a serious coin shortage. People were hoarding coins, especially silver ones, because the value of the metal inside them was rising. As a result, everyday transactions became difficult. There simply weren't enough coins in circulation. To solve this crisis, the U.S. Mint made a bold decision. From 1965 through 1967, they removed mint marks from coins entirely. Normally, coins would carry a small letter indicating where they were made, like D for Denver or S for San Francisco. But during this period, no coins carried mint marks at all. That means every 1967 Lincoln penny you find, no matter where it was actually produced, appears to have no mint mark. This wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. The goal was to discourage collectors from hoarding coins based on mint location and to keep coins flowing in everyday US. So, when you hear someone say 1967 no mint mark penny, it's important to understand that this is actually normal for that year. It doesn't automatically make the coin rare. But that doesn't mean all 1967 pennies are the same. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. The front, or obverse, features Abraham Lincoln's portrait, a design that has been used since 1909. Above his head, you'll see the words, "In God We Trust." To the left is the word liberty, and to the right is the year, 1967. On the back, or reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. The words United States of America appear across the top, E pluribus unum is above the memorial, and 1 cent is at the bottom. The coin is made primarily of copper, with a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. It weighs about 3.11 grams and has a smooth edge. Now, here's where things get interesting. While most 1967 pennies are common, certain versions and conditions can make them much more valuable than their face value. One of the biggest factors is condition. Coins that were never circulated, known as uncirculated coins, can be worth significantly more. These coins still have their original shine, sharp details, and no signs of wear. Collectors grade coins on a scale, and the highest grades, like MS65 or higher, can bring premium prices. For example, a typical worn 1967 penny might only be worth 1 or 2 cents. But a high-grade uncirculated example can sell for several dollars, and in rare cases, even more depending on its quality. Another factor is errors. Coin errors are one of the most exciting parts of collecting, and the 1967 penny is no exception. During the minting process, mistakes sometimes happen, and these mistakes can turn an ordinary coin into something highly collectible. Some known errors for 1967 pennies include double die errors, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during production. You might notice doubling in the letters or numbers. There are also off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned on the coin, and clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing due to a cutting error. These types of errors are rare, and when they do appear, they can increase the coin's value dramatically. Depending on the severity and visibility of the error, some 1967 error pennies have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars. There are also special coins from this year known as special mint sets, or SMS coins. Since the U.S. Mint did not produce traditional proof coins in 1967, they created these special sets instead. These coins were struck with extra care, giving them a sharper appearance and a slightly more polished look than regular circulation coins. A 1967 SMS penny in high grade can be worth significantly more than a regular penny from the same year. Some well-preserved examples have sold for over $10, and exceptional specimens can go even higher. Now let's talk about real value. While most 1967 pennies are not rare, there have been sales that show how valuable they can become under the right conditions. High-grade SMS coins have been known to sell for over $20, and error coins can reach much higher depending on their uniqueness. However, it's important to stay realistic. The vast majority of 1967 pennies you find in circulation will not make you rich. But the excitement comes from the possibility that one might stand out. So how can you tell if your 1967 penny is worth more than 1 cent? Start by checking the condition. Look at the coin under good lighting. If it still has a bright, shiny surface and sharp details, it could be uncirculated. Pay attention to Lincoln's hair, the lines on the memorial, and the lettering. The clearer and sharper these features are, the better. Next, look for errors. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Check for doubling in the letters, unusual shapes, or anything that looks off. Even small differences can matter. Also, consider whether your coin might be from a special mint set. These coins often have a slightly different appearance, with a smoother, more refined finish compared to regular coins. Be cautious of fakes or misleading claims. Some sellers might try to market any 1967 penny as rare simply because it has no mint mark. But as we've discussed, that's normal for this year. True value comes from condition, errors, and special characteristics, not just the absence of a mint mark. One interesting fact about the 1967 penny is that it represents a unique moment in U.S. history when the government took unusual steps to control coin circulation. The removal of mint marks was a temporary solution, and by 1968, mint marks were reintroduced. Another surprising detail is how many of these coins were produced. The mintage was extremely high, with billions of pennies struck that year. That's one reason why most of them are still common today. Yet despite their high numbers, collectors are still drawn to the 1967 penny. Why? Because it represents a story. It's not just about rarity. It's about history, change, and the small details that make each coin unique. For many collectors, the thrill comes from searching through rolls of pennies, hoping to find that one coin that stands out. Maybe it's in perfect condition, maybe it has a rare error, or maybe it's just the satisfaction of holding a piece of history in your hand. The 1967 Lincoln penny reminds us that even the most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary stories. It's a coin that millions of people have handled, spent, and overlooked. Yet within that simplicity lies a connection to a specific moment in time, when the country faced a challenge and found a creative solution. So the next time you come across a 1967 penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Examine the details. You might not find a fortune, but you will discover a piece of history that has traveled through decades to reach you. And who knows? Hidden among the billions of coins out there could still be a few special ones waiting to be found. Because sometimes, the most valuable discoveries aren't the ones that look rare at first glance. They're the ones that reveal their secrets only to those who take the time to look a little closer. Welcome back. Imagine holding a simple penny in your hand, something you might normally ignore or even toss aside. Now imagine that same penny quietly carrying a story, a history, and in some cases, a value far greater than 1 cent. Today, we're diving into one of those coins, the 1968 mint mark Lincoln penny, and uncovering why this small piece of copper has captured the attention of collectors for decades. The 1968 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1968, the United States Mint had already been producing these coins for nearly 60 years. What makes this particular penny stand out is the small S mint mark beneath the date, indicating it was struck at the San Francisco Mint. At first glance, it may look like any other penny, but there's much more beneath the surface. To understand this coin, we need to step back into the late 1960s. This was a time of major change in the United States. The country had recently transitioned away from using silver in circulating coins due to rising metal costs. While pennies were still made primarily of copper, the mint was under pressure to modernize production and improve quality. During this period, San Francisco shifted its role from producing coins for everyday circulation to focusing more on proof coins, special coins made for collectors with a higher level of detail and finish. In 1968, the San Francisco Mint resumed producing proof coins after a brief pause in earlier years. That's where the 1968 S penny becomes especially interesting. Most pennies with the S Mint mark from that year were not intended for circulation. Instead, they were struck as proof coins, meaning they were carefully made using polished dies and specially prepared planchets to create a mirror-like finish. Now let's talk about the design. The obverse, or front, of the coin features the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. His initials, VDB, can be found at the bottom of the reverse side on some coins, although they are small and often overlooked. The reverse of the 1968 penny still uses the classic wheat ears design that had been replaced in 1959. So instead, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial on the back. This design, created by Frank Gasparo, shows the iconic monument in Washington, D.C., with surprising detail for such a small coin. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial. The metal composition of the 1968 S penny is primarily copper, about 95%, with the remaining 5% made up of zinc and tin. This gives the coin its familiar reddish-brown color when new. Over time, these coins can tone and change color, developing shades of brown or even deep chocolate hues, depending on how they've been stored. But what really draws collectors to the 1968 S penny are its unique characteristics and the possibility of rare errors. Proof coins from San Francisco are known for their sharp details and reflective surfaces, but not all of them were perfect. Some coins from this year show what collectors call a double die effect, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. This kind of error can significantly increase a coin's value. Another detail to watch for is the quality of the strike. Because proof coins are made with extra care, they usually have crisp lines and deep contrast between the raised design and the background. However, variations do exist, and coins with exceptional clarity and minimal imperfections are much more desirable. So why is this penny considered valuable? The answer lies in a combination of factors: condition, rarity, and demand. While millions of 1968 S-proof pennies were produced, only a small percentage have survived in perfect or near-perfect condition. Coins are graded on a scale, and those that achieve the highest grades, such as PR69 or PR70, are extremely rare. These top-tier coins are the ones that command serious attention from collectors. In real-world sales, the difference in value can be dramatic. A typical 1968 S penny in average condition might only be worth a few dollars. But a high-grade proof coin with deep cameo contrast, where the design appears frosted against a mirror-like background, can sell for hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, coins with exceptional quality or notable errors have reached even higher prices at auction, sometimes crossing into the thousands. Imagine finding one of these in an old coin set or inherited collection. It's not just about the money. It's about the story behind the coin and the connection to a specific moment in history. Of course, with valuable coins comes the risk of counterfeits or misidentified pieces. So how can you tell if your 1968 S penny is the real deal? First, check the mint mark. The S should be clear and well-defined, not blurry or oddly shaped. On genuine proof coins, the surfaces should appear highly reflective, almost like a mirror. If the coin looks dull or lacks detail, it may not be a proof coin at all. Next, examine the edges and overall finish. Proof coins are struck with special care, so they tend to have sharper edges and more precise details compared to regular circulation coins. You can also weigh the coin if you have a precise scale. A standard 1968 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant deviations from this could indicate a problem. Another helpful step is to compare your coin with verified examples from reputable sources. Over time, your eye will become trained to spot the subtle differences between an ordinary coin and a true collector's piece. Here's a fun detail that surprises many people. Even though the 1968 S penny was primarily made as a proof coin, some examples have found their way into circulation over the years. This often happens when collectors spend or lose their proof sets, allowing these special coins to mix with everyday change. That means there's always a small chance, however slim, that one could show up where you least expect it. Collectors also love this coin because it represents a turning point in U.S. coin production. The late 1960s marked a shift toward modern minting practices and a growing emphasis on coins made specifically for collectors. The 1968 penny is part of that transition, bridging the gap between older traditions and newer techniques. There's also something timeless about the Lincoln penny itself. It's one of the most recognizable coins in the world, and for many people it was the first coin they ever held. Adding a piece like the 1968 to a collection isn't just about value. It's about preserving a small piece of history. For seasoned collectors, the challenge lies in finding the best possible example. They look for coins with flawless surfaces, strong contrast, and no visible marks. These are the coins that stand out, the ones that can turn a simple collection into something truly special. And for beginners, this coin offers a perfect entry point. It's accessible, widely available in lower grades, and rich with history. You don't need to spend a fortune to own one, but if you're lucky enough to find a high-grade example, the rewards can be significant. As we wrap up, think about the journey of this coin. From its creation at the San Francisco Mint in 1968 to its place in collections around the world today, the 1968 Lincoln penny is more than just currency. It's a reminder that even the smallest objects can carry stories, value, and meaning far beyond what we see on the surface. So the next time you come across a penny, take a closer look, because hidden in that small copper coin might be a piece of history waiting to be discovered. And maybe, just maybe, a treasure you never expected to find. Welcome back. What if the small, ordinary penny sitting in your pocket right now could be worth far more than 1 cent? Maybe even hundreds or thousands of dollars. Today, we're diving into the story of a coin that many people overlook, but collectors quietly watch for: the 1969 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, the 1969 D Lincoln penny looks just like any other coin from your spare change. It's small, copper-colored, and carries the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front. The D Mint mark, located just below the year, tells us it was produced at the Denver Mint. Millions of these coins were made, and for decades, they circulated through everyday transactions: grocery stores, gas stations, and pockets across America. But hidden among these common coins are a few that hold surprising value. To understand why, we need to go back to the late 1960s. The United States was going through a time of change. The country had recently shifted away from using silver in most coins due to rising metal costs. Pennies, however, were still made mostly of copper, giving them that classic reddish tone. In 1969, the U.S. Mint continued producing Lincoln pennies using a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. These coins were built to last, and many of them still exist today. The Lincoln penny design itself had already been around for decades. First introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. On the front or obverse, you see Lincoln's profile designed by Victor David Brenner. On the back, or reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. If you look closely, you can even spot a tiny image of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial, one of the smallest detailed features ever included on a coin. Now, let's talk about what makes the 1969 D penny interesting. Most of these coins are common. In fact, over 4 billion pennies were minted in Denver that year. That means the average 1969 D penny you find is usually only worth a few cents above face value, especially if it's worn. But condition is everything. Coins that were never used in circulation, known as uncirculated coins, can be worth significantly more. A bright, clean 1969 D penny with sharp details and original shine can sell for several dollars, sometimes even higher depending on grading. But the real excitement comes from errors. In the world of coin collecting, mistakes made during the minting process can turn an ordinary coin into something extraordinary. While the famous 1969 double die penny comes from the Philadelphia Mint and has no mint mark, collectors still pay close attention to 1969 D pennies for smaller but valuable errors. Some 1969 D pennies show what's called a repunched mint mark. This happens when the D was stamped more than once, slightly off from the original position. Under magnification, you might see a shadow or doubling effect around the mint mark. These coins can be worth far more than regular ones, especially if the doubling is clear. There are also die cracks, off-center strikes, and other minor variations that collectors love. A coin struck slightly off-center, where part of the design is missing or shifted, can be worth a surprising amount depending on how dramatic the error is. Even small imperfections can increase value if they're rare and well-preserved. Now let's talk about real value. A typical circulated 1969D penny might only be worth 1 to 5 cents. But in higher grades, the price climbs. Coins graded MS-65 or higher, meaning they are in near-perfect condition, can sell for $10, $20, or more. Exceptional examples with deep red color, known as RD by collectors, can reach even higher prices at auction. Error coins are where things get exciting. A 1969D penny with a strong repunched mint mark or noticeable minting error could sell for $50, $100, or even several $100s depending on rarity and condition. While it may not reach the legendary prices of some rare coins, it still offers a thrilling possibility for anyone searching through old pennies. So, how can you tell if you have a valuable 1969D penny? Start by checking the date and mint mark. Make sure the D is present under the year. Next, look at the coin's condition. Is it shiny or dull? Are the details sharp or worn down? The better the condition, the higher the potential value. Then, take a closer look at the mint mark and lettering. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Look for doubling, unusual shapes, or anything that seems off. Compare your coin to images of known error coins. If something looks unusual, it might be worth getting it checked by a professional coin grading service. Be careful of fakes or altered coins. Some people try to add a fake mint mark to increase value. On a genuine 1969D penny, the mint mark should look natural and consistent with the rest of the coin. It should not appear glued on or mismatched in style. When in doubt, expert verification is always the safest route. Here's something many people don't realize. Pennies from this era are getting harder to find in top condition because they were used so heavily in everyday life. Unlike coins that were saved or collected right away, most 1969D pennies spent years being passed from hand to hand. That means truly pristine examples are becoming rarer over time. Another interesting fact is that copper pennies themselves are becoming more valuable due to their metal content. While it's illegal to melt US coins for profit, the intrinsic value of the copper in older pennies has often been higher than 1 cent. This adds another layer of interest for collectors and investors. Collectors love the 1969D penny because it represents a balance between accessibility and discovery. It's not so rare that you'll never find one, but it's also not so common that every coin is worthless. There's always a chance, however small, that you might come across a hidden gem in a jar of old coins or a roll from the bank. For many collectors, the thrill is in the hunt. Searching through coins becomes a treasure hunt, where each penny could hold a secret. The 1969D penny is a perfect example of this excitement. It teaches us that value isn't always obvious, and sometimes the smallest objects can carry the biggest surprises. As we wrap up, think about this. How many pennies have passed through your hands without a second thought? How many could still be waiting, unnoticed, in drawers, jars, or old collections? The 1969D Lincoln penny may not always look special, but under the right conditions, it can tell a story of history, craftsmanship, and hidden value. And the next time you hear the clink of a penny dropping into your hand, you might just pause for a second longer, because that ordinary coin could be far more extraordinary than you ever imagined. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a simple penny, something you've seen 1,000 times before. But this time, that tiny coin could be worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, today we're uncovering the story behind the 1970D Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary but holds secrets that collectors are still chasing decades later. The 1970D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States, and the small D mint mark on the front tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint. At first glance, it doesn't look much different from other pennies. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But hidden within certain versions of this coin are details so rare that they've turned everyday pocket change into collector treasures. To understand why this coin matters, we need to go back to the year 1970. The United States was going through a time of change. Technology was advancing, the economy was shifting, and the demand for coins in everyday circulation was rising. The U.S. Mint needed to produce millions of pennies quickly to keep up with daily transactions across the country. In Denver, massive presses worked around the clock, striking coins in huge quantities. Because of this high-speed production, mistakes were bound to happen. And in the world of coin collecting, mistakes can sometimes be worth more than perfection. The 1970 Lincoln penny was made primarily of 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving it that rich, warm color people associate with older pennies. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile, a design that has been used since 1909. Above his head is the word Liberty. The year 1970 appears to the right, and just below it sits the small D mint mark. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with the words United States of America and 1 cent clearly visible. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. It's a small detail, but it shows the craftsmanship behind even the most common coins. But here's where things get interesting. Not all 1970 pennies are the same. Some of them carry rare features that most people would never notice unless they knew exactly what to look for. One of the most talked about varieties is the 1970 small date penny. In most coins from that year, the date appears slightly larger and more spread out. But in the small date version, the numbers are tighter and more compact. The difference is subtle, but to collectors, it's a big deal. There's also something known as the high 7 and low 7 variety. This refers to the position of the number 7 in the date. On some coins, the 7 sits slightly higher than the other numbers, while on others it appears lower. These small variations happen during the minting process when different dies were used. Now, you might be wondering, why would such tiny differences matter? The answer is simple: rarity. When fewer coins are made with a specific feature, collectors start paying attention. And when collectors compete to own those rare pieces, the value can rise dramatically. Some 1970 Lincoln pennies, especially those in excellent condition or with rare varieties, have sold for impressive amounts. While most of these pennies are still worth just 1 cent, certain examples have been sold for hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, coins with exceptional quality or unique characteristics have reached even higher prices at auctions. Condition plays a huge role here. A coin that has been heavily used, scratched, or worn down will not attract much attention. But a coin that looks almost new, with sharp details and a bright surface, is far more desirable. Collectors often refer to these as uncirculated coins. There are also error coins from 1970 that can be extremely valuable. These errors might include double strikes, where the design appears slightly duplicated, or off-center strikes, where the image is not perfectly aligned. These mistakes are rare because most flawed coins are caught before they leave the mint. When one slips through, it becomes a hidden gem. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 1970 penny? First, look closely at the date. Compare the size and spacing of the numbers. If the date appears smaller and tighter than usual, you might have the small date variety. Next, examine the number 7. Is it sitting higher or lower compared to the other numbers? This small detail can make a difference. Then, check the overall condition of the coin. Are the details sharp? Can you clearly see Lincoln's hair and the lines in the memorial? The better the condition, the higher the potential value. It's also important to be cautious. Not every unusual-looking coin is valuable. Some coins may appear different simply because of wear or damage. That's why serious collectors often use magnifying tools or even consult professional grading services to confirm authenticity. Another thing to watch out for is counterfeit coins. While pennies are not the most common target for counterfeiters, rare varieties can attract attention. A fake coin might have uneven details, incorrect weight, or unusual coloring. If you think you have something special, it's always a good idea to have it examined by an expert. Now here's something surprising. Millions of 1970 pennies were made, yet only a small number of them carry the rare features collectors are looking for. This means that somewhere out there, valuable coins could still be hiding in jars, drawers, or even in circulation. Think about that for a moment. The next time you receive change, you might unknowingly hold a coin that's worth far more than its face value. There's also a deeper reason why collectors love the 1970 Lincoln penny. It represents a moment in history when everyday objects carried hidden stories. Each coin is a snapshot of the time it was made, reflecting the technology, economy, and craftsmanship of that era. For many collectors, it's not just about money. It's about the thrill of discovery. Finding a rare coin feels like uncovering a piece of history that has been waiting to be noticed. Some collectors spend years searching for specific varieties. They examine thousands of coins, hoping to find that one special piece. And when they do, it's a moment they never forget. The 1970 penny is also popular because it's accessible. Unlike some rare coins that are locked away in museums or private collections, this coin can still be found by everyday people. You don't need to be wealthy to start looking. All you need is curiosity and a keen eye. There are even stories of people who discovered valuable coins by accident. A penny picked up from a cash register, a coin found in an old jar, or even something inherited from a relative. These unexpected finds remind us that treasure doesn't always come in obvious forms. Another interesting detail is how small design differences can create big excitement. To someone unfamiliar with coins, the variations in the 1970 penny might seem insignificant. But to collectors, these details are everything. They turn a common object into something unique and meaningful. Over time, the demand for rare coins has continued to grow. As more people become interested in collecting, the competition for high-quality examples increases. This has helped push values higher, especially for coins that are well-preserved and authenticated. But even if you never find a rare version, the 1970 penny still carries value in another way. Connects us to the past. It reminds us of a time when coins were made differently, when small details mattered, and when everyday objects could hold hidden stories. So the next time you see a penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Examine the date, the details, and the condition, because hidden within something so small could be a story worth telling, or even a discovery worth celebrating. And who knows? That ordinary-looking coin in your hand might just be the one that collectors have been searching for all along. Welcome back. Imagine holding a penny that looks almost identical to the ones you've seen your whole life, but hidden in that tiny detail, a small letter S, could be a story of precision, rarity, and a surprising value that most people completely overlook. Today, we're talking about the 1971 Lincoln penny, a coin that may seem ordinary at first glance, but carries a fascinating background tied to American history, minting technology, and the quiet world of collectors who search for these hidden treasures. The 1971 Lincoln penny was produced at the San Francisco Mint, one of the most well-known mint facilities in the United States. The S mint mark, located just below the date on the front of the coin, tells us exactly where it was made. But what makes this particular coin interesting is not just where it came from, but how it was made and who it was intended for. Back in 1971, the United States was going through a period of economic change. Inflation was rising, and the value of copper was becoming more noticeable. Yet, the Lincoln penny remained a symbol of everyday commerce. The design still featured Abraham Lincoln on the front, a tradition that began in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. On the back, you would still see the familiar wheat ears design had already been replaced in 1959 with the Lincoln Memorial, representing a shift toward modern symbolism. The San Francisco Mint, where this coin was struck, had a unique role during this time. Unlike the Philadelphia and Denver mints, San Francisco was primarily focused on producing proof coins. Proof coins are specially made for collectors. They are struck with extra care, using polished dies and planchets, which gives them a mirror-like finish and sharp details. Now here's where it gets interesting. The 1971 Lincoln penny exists in two main forms. One is the proof version, made specifically for collectors. The other is a business strike version, which was produced in smaller numbers compared to other mints. This dual nature adds an extra layer of curiosity and confusion for collectors. Let's talk about the design. On the front of the coin, you'll see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing to the right. Above his head is the word liberty, and the phrase "In God We Trust" arches across the top. The date, 1971, sits to the right, with the small S mint mark just below it. On the reverse side, The Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny depiction of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a detail many people never notice. Around the edges, you'll find the words United States of America and 1 cent. The coin is made primarily of copper, with a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. It weighs about 3.11 grams and has a smooth edge. At first glance, nothing seems unusual. But the real intrigue begins when you start looking for variations and errors. One of the most talked about variations is the 1971 proof penny with what collectors call a double die obverse. This means that during the minting process, the design was stamped slightly off alignment more than once, creating a doubling effect on the letters and numbers. If you look closely at the date or the words on the front, you might notice a slight shadow or duplication. This error is highly sought after because it wasn't intentional, and only a limited number of coins show this feature clearly. For collectors, finding a strong double die example can feel like discovering a hidden gem. Another interesting detail involves the quality of the proof coins. While proof coins are supposed to be flawless, not all of them came out perfect. Some have minor imperfections, spots, or hazing over time. However, those that remain in pristine condition, especially those graded highly by professional grading services, can command impressive prices. So why is the 1971 Lincoln penny considered valuable? Comes down to a combination of factors. First, the proof versions were made in limited quantities compared to regular circulation coins. Second, condition plays a huge role. A coin that looks brand new with deep mirror-like surfaces and no visible marks is far more valuable than one that shows wear. Then there are the error coins. A strong double die example or a coin with unusual characteristics can significantly increase its value. Collectors are always searching for these rare variations, and when one appears on the market, it can attract a lot of attention. In terms of real value, most 1971 proof pennies are not extremely expensive. In average condition, they might be worth a few dollars. But when you move into higher grades, especially those graded as PR69 or PR70, the value can jump dramatically. Some top-quality examples have sold for over $100, and in rare cases, even more. If you happen to find a double die version in excellent condition, the value can climb into the hundreds or even thousands, depending on the strength of the error and the overall quality of the coin. Now, if you're wondering how to tell if you have a genuine 1971 Lincoln penny, there are a few simple things to look for. First, check the mint mark. It should be a small, clear S located just below the date. On genuine coins, the mint mark will look clean and properly aligned, not crooked or oddly shaped. Next, examine the surface. Proof coins will have a shiny, mirror-like finish, especially in the background areas. The raised parts of the design, like Lincoln's portrait, will have a frosted appearance, creating a beautiful contrast known as cameo. If you're checking for a double die, use a magnifying glass or a coin loupe. Look closely at the date and the lettering. True doubling will appear as a clear separation, not just a blurry or worn effect. Weight and size are also important. A genuine coin should weigh around 3.11 grams and match the standard dimensions of a Lincoln penny. If something feels off, it's worth getting the coin checked by a professional. There are also counterfeit coins out there, though they are not extremely common for this particular year. Still, it's always wise to be cautious, especially if a coin is being sold as a rare error or in unusually high condition. Here's a fun fact that many people don't realize. The San Francisco Mint stopped producing regular circulation pennies after the early 1970s and focused almost entirely on proof coins. That makes coins like the 1971 SA part of a transitional period in U.S. minting history. Another interesting detail is how many of these coins were originally sold as part of proof sets. People would buy these sets and store them away, often forgetting about them for decades. Today, some of those sets are being rediscovered, and inside them could be coins in near-perfect condition. Collectors love the 1971 Lincoln penny for several reasons. It represents a blend of history, craftsmanship, and the thrill of discovery. It's not just about the value, but about the story behind the coin and the possibility that something rare might be hiding in plain sight. For new collectors, this coin is also an accessible entry point. It's not so rare that it's impossible to find, but it's interesting enough to spark curiosity and encourage deeper exploration into the world of coin collecting. And that's really what makes coins like this so special. They connect us to a specific moment in time, a snapshot of history that you can hold in your hand. Every scratch, every shine, every tiny detail tells a story. So the next time you come across an old coin jar, a forgotten collection, or even a simple penny in your pocket, take a closer look. That small S mint mark might just be the beginning of a much bigger story than you ever expected. Because sometimes, the most ordinary objects carry the most extraordinary secrets, waiting quietly for someone curious enough to notice. Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that this tiny piece of copper could tell a story from over 50 years ago, and in some cases, even be worth far more than 1 cent. Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 1973 Lincoln penny, a coin that millions have seen, but very few truly understand. The 1973 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States in the year 1973 at the Denver Mint. The small letter D, stamped beneath the date, tells us exactly where it was made. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary penny. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But beneath that ordinary appearance lies a fascinating history and a few hidden secrets that have caught the attention of collectors across the country. To understand this coin, we need to go back to 1973. The United States was in a period of economic change. Inflation was rising, and the cost of producing coins was becoming more noticeable. Despite these challenges, the demand for pennies remained high. The Denver Mint worked at full capacity, producing over 3.5 billion Lincoln pennies that year. That's a massive number, and it might make you think this coin is too common to be valuable. But as you'll soon discover, numbers don't always tell the whole story. The design of the 1973 penny follows the classic Lincoln cent style that began in 1909. On the front, you see the profile of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date, 1973, along with the small D mint mark. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, with tiny details that even include a small image of Lincoln seated inside the building if you look closely enough. This coin is made mostly of copper, about 95%, with the remaining 5% consisting of zinc. That composition gives it the warm, reddish-brown color that many people associate with older pennies. However, over time, these coins can change color depending on how they are stored. Some remain bright red, while others turn brown or develop a mix of both shades. And believe it or not, that color can affect the coin's value. Now here's where things get interesting. Even though billions of these coins were made, not all of them are the same. Some 1973 pennies were struck with errors during the minting process. These errors are what collectors look for, and they can turn an ordinary penny into something much more valuable. One of the most talked about errors is the doubled die. This happens when the coin design is accidentally stamped more than once, slightly offset, creating a noticeable doubling effect on the letters or numbers. On a 1973 penny, you might see this doubling on the word Liberty or on the date. These coins are rare, and collectors are always searching for them. Another type of error is an off-center strike. This occurs when the coin is not properly aligned during the minting process, causing part of the design to be missing. Depending on how off-center the strike is, the coin can be worth significantly more than its face value. There are also coins with die cracks, where small lines appear on the surface due to wear and tear on the minting equipment. While some cracks are minor, others are more dramatic and can add to the coin's uniqueness. So, what is a 1973 penny actually worth? For most coins in average condition, the value is still just 1 cent. But if the coin is in excellent condition, especially if it has never been circulated, the value can rise to a few dollars. Coins that still have their original red color are often more desirable and can sell for higher prices. Now let's talk about the exciting part, collector sales. High-grade 1973 pennies, those rated in near-perfect condition, have been known to sell for over $10 to $20. That may not sound like a fortune, but remember, this is a coin that was once worth just a single cent. And if you find one with a clear error, the value can jump even higher. Some error coins have sold for hundreds of dollars, depending on the rarity and visibility of the mistake. But how can you tell if the penny you have is real or something special? First, Check the date and the mint mark. Look for the small d beneath the year 1973. Next, examine the coin closely under good lighting. A magnifying glass can help you spot doubling, cracks, or unusual features. Pay attention to the color as well. A bright red coin is usually more valuable than a dull brown one. Also, take note of the coin's condition. Coins that have been heavily used will show scratches, fading, and wear, which lowers their value. On the other hand, coins that look almost new, with sharp details and minimal damage, are much more desirable to collectors. Here's something many people don't realize. Even though the 1973 D penny is not considered extremely rare, finding one in perfect condition is surprisingly difficult. Most of these coins were used in everyday transactions, passed from hand to hand, and exposed to years of wear. That's why collectors are willing to pay more for coins that have been preserved carefully. Another fun fact is that the Lincoln Memorial design used on this coin was replaced in 2009 with new reverse designs to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. That makes coins like the 1973 D penny part of a completed chapter in U.S. coin history. They represent a time when this design was standard, before the changes that came later. Collectors also love this coin because it's accessible. Unlike rare gold coins or extremely limited editions, the 1973 D penny can still be found in old collections, jars of spare change, or even inherited coin boxes. It gives new collectors a chance to enter the hobby without spending a lot of money, while still offering the thrill of discovering something valuable. And there's a deeper appeal as well. Coins like this are small pieces of history. They were around during the early 1970s, a time of major cultural and economic shifts in America. Every scratch, every mark, every bit of wear tells a story about where that coin has been and who might have used it. So the next time you come across a 1973 D Lincoln penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. You might just be holding more than a simple coin. You could be holding a piece of history, a collector's item, or even a small hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. And that's the beauty of coin collecting. It turns everyday objects into stories, and sometimes those stories are worth far more than their face value.